In the twilight of the 4th century AD, the Roman Empire, a colossal entity that had once stretched from the sun-kissed sands of North Africa to the misty highlands of Britannia, stood at a precipice. The empire's vastness, which had been its strength, now seemed to be its Achilles' heel. The administrative genius of Emperor Diocletian had divided the empire into the eastern and western halves, aiming for more effective governance. While the Eastern Empire, with its capital in Constantinople, thrived and flourished, the Western Empire, governed from Milan and later Ravenna, grappled with a myriad of challenges. Rome, once the heart of this vast empire, had been eclipsed in political importance, but remained a potent symbol of Roman prestige and legacy. Externally, the empire's boundaries were under relentless pressure. Germanic tribes, driven by a combination of ambition and the westward push of the Huns, frequently tested the Roman frontiers. The Goths, one such tribe, had a complex relationship with Rome. Initially, refugees fleeing the Hunnic onslaught were allowed to settle within the empire's borders. However, mistreatment and local tensions led to the cataclysmic Battle of Adrianople in 378 AD, where the Eastern Roman Emperor Valens was defeated and killed. Internally, the empire was a cauldron of religious and cultural transformation. Christianity, once a persecuted sect, had become the state religion under Emperor Theodosius I. The old pagan traditions, which had defined Roman identity for centuries, were now on the wane. This seismic religious shift was not without its tensions. Theological debates, like the Arian controversy, created rifts not just among the clergy but also within the empire's political fabric. Economically, the Western Roman Empire faced stagnation. The once thriving trade networks were disrupted by external threats, leading to urban decline. The empire's silver currency, the denarius, suffered from rampant inflation, eroding economic confidence. Amidst this backdrop, the Visigoths, led by King Alaric, emerged as a formidable force. Initially serving as foederati, basically allied troops for the Romans, they grew increasingly disillusioned by broken promises and unpaid wages. Alaric, who had once served in the Roman military and admired its institutions, sought a homeland for his people and recognition from the empire. But repeated negotiations failed, setting the stage for a confrontation that would shake the very foundations of the Roman world. As the 5th century dawned, the winds of change blew ominously over the Italian peninsula. The death of Emperor Theodosius in 395 AD split the empire between his two sons, Honorius in the west and Arcadius in the east. This division, while administrative in nature, also marked a divergence in the fortunes of the two halves. The Western Empire, with its capital initially in Milan and later shifted to Ravenna for its defensible marshlands, was particularly vulnerable. Alaric, sensing an opportunity and driven by the aspirations of his people, turned from a Roman commander into a king of the Goths. He led a series of campaigns into the eastern Roman territories, laying siege to Constantinople. Though he was repelled, his actions signaled a clear shift in Gothic-Roman relations. By the early 400s, Alaric's gaze turned to the richer and more vulnerable Western Empire. He marched into Italy, demanding recognition and provisions for his people. The Roman response was a mix of diplomacy and military resistance, neither of which was particularly effective. Stilicho, the Vandal-born general and the power behind the young Emperor Honorius, managed to stave off Alaric's advances temporarily. However, court intrigues led to Stilicho's execution in 408 AD, removing a significant check on Alaric's ambitions. Rome's vulnerability was further exacerbated by the withdrawal of legions from its borders to defend Italy, leading to unchecked barbarian incursions in the provinces. The empire's internal fabric was fraying, with usurpers like Constantine III in Britain and Gaul challenging Honorius's already tenuous hold. Alaric, ever the pragmatist, sought a negotiated settlement. He desired a homeland for the Goths within the empire and a position of authority for himself. However, negotiations with Honorius broke down, often due to the emperor's indecisiveness and the influence of his courtiers. The city of Rome, which had not seen foreign invaders for nearly 8 centuries, was about to witness an event that would symbolize the fragility of even the greatest of empires. Alaric's first siege of Rome in 408 AD was not an outright act of aggression but rather a strategic maneuver. The Visigoths, having been denied the rewards and positions they felt were due to them, sought to exert pressure on the Roman court. The siege was a means to an end, to force Emperor Honorius, ensconced in the more defensible city of Ravenna, to accede to their demands. During this initial blockade, the Eternal City's inhabitants felt the sting of hunger and deprivation. The Senate, in a desperate bid, even considered assassinating Emperor Honorius to appease Alaric, a testament to the dire straits the city found itself in. The second siege in 409 AD was a more intensified affair. Alaric, frustrated by the lack of a concrete agreement and the duplicity of certain Roman officials, tightened the noose around Rome. This time, the pressure bore fruit. The city gates were opened to the Visigoths, not as invaders but as enforcers. Priscus Attalus was installed as a puppet emperor, a move designed to further coerce Honorius into negotiations. However, the relationship between Alaric and Attalus quickly soured. The latter's inability to lift the blockade at the port of Ostia and his independent negotiations with Honorius led Alaric to strip Attalus of his title, paving the way for the third and most infamous siege in 410 AD. The Visigoths, led by the indomitable Alaric, stood at the gates of Rome, the heart of an empire that had once commanded the known world. The air was thick with tension, the silence punctuated only by the distant murmurs of the Gothic camp and the hushed prayers of the Romans within the city walls. As dawn broke on that fateful day, the unthinkable happened. The gates of Rome, which had withstood countless enemies, yielded to the Visigoths. But this was no frenzied invasion. It was a methodical, almost solemn procession. The streets that had once echoed with the grandeur of triumphal parades now resonated with the heavy trudge of Visigoth boots. The city's grand edifices, testimonies to Rome's architectural prowess, bore silent witness to this seismic shift in power. Yet, amidst the pillage and plunder, there was an unexpected restraint. Alaric, though a conqueror, held a deep respect for the sanctity of Rome. The city's churches, bastions of the burgeoning Christian faith, were spared the Visigoths' wrath. The Basilica of St. Peter and the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls became sanctuaries, their hallowed grounds offering refuge to Romans, both noble and commoner, from the storm outside. It was said that amidst the chaos, a Roman matron, confronted by a Visigoth demanding her treasures, presented a chalice containing the sacrament of the Eucharist. Recognizing its sacredness, the soldier not only spared the chalice but also ensured the safety of the woman's abode. However, the city's grand palaces and homes, repositories of wealth accumulated over centuries, were not so fortunate. Gold, silver, and precious gems, symbols of Roman opulence, were seized. The Forum, once the epicenter of Roman public life, was ransacked, its statues and monuments desecrated. The very fabric of Roman society was unraveling. Senators, once the paragons of Roman authority, were rendered powerless, their prestige and wealth stripped away. Many Romans were taken into captivity, their fates now intertwined with the whims of their Visigoth captors. Among the many profound desecrations that occurred during those tumultuous days was an act that struck at the very heart of Rome's imperial legacy. The Mausoleum of Augustus, a grand sepulchre that housed the remains of Rome's revered emperors, was not spared the Visigoths' fury. This monumental tomb, a testament to the grandeur of the Julio-Claudian dynasty, was violated. The sanctity of the mausoleum was shattered as the Visigoths, perhaps in a symbolic act of defiance against the empire's past glory, breached its chambers. The ashes of emperors, including those of Augustus himself, were scattered to the winds. In this act of desecration, the ephemeral nature of power and legacy was laid bare. The very essence of Rome's founding dynasty, reduced to ashes and dispersed by the hands of invaders, became a poignant emblem of the city's fall from grace. As the third day dawned, Alaric ordered a retreat, and the Visigoths began their exodus from the city, laden with spoils. In the wake of the Visigoths' departure from Rome, a haunting silence enveloped the city. The Eternal City, which had stood as the beacon of civilization and the heart of an empire for centuries, now bore the scars of violation. Its streets, once bustling with the vibrancy of Roman life, were now littered with the remnants of the sack. a stark testament to the empire's fragility. The psychological impact of the sack was profound. For Romans, the city was not just a geographical entity but a symbol of their identity, their legacy, and their divine mandate. To see it desecrated was to witness the unraveling of the very fabric of their world. Philosophers and theologians grappled with the event's implications. How could Rome, favored by the gods and later by the Christian God, fall to barbarians? Saint Augustine, in his monumental work, The City of God, sought to provide an answer, drawing a distinction between the earthly city of Rome and the heavenly city of God, emphasizing the transitory nature of human constructs. Politically, the sack exposed the chasm between the empire's leadership and its realities. Emperor Honorius, ensconced in the marshy refuge of Ravenna, seemed detached, if not indifferent, to Rome's fate. His reign, already marred by indecisiveness and reliance on courtiers, was further tainted by his perceived inaction. The Roman Senate, once the cornerstone of the Republic and still a significant institution, found its influence waning, its voice drowned amidst the empire's tumultuous politics. For Alaric, the man who had dared to breach Rome's walls, destiny had a final twist in store. His triumph in Rome, rather than being a prologue to further conquests, became his swan song. Merely months after the sack, Alaric met his end in the southern Italian town of Cosenza. The circumstances of his death remain shrouded in mystery, but the legends surrounding his burial are evocative. It is said that the Vicento River was diverted, and Alaric was buried in its bed with a trove of treasures, after which the waters were returned to their course, forever guarding the Gothic king's final resting place. The Visigoths, now leaderless, ventured further into the Italian peninsula before eventually moving westward, establishing a kingdom in what is now modern-day Spain and southern France. Their relationship with Rome evolved from conquerors to federati, allies bound to the empire's service. In the broader tapestry of history, the sack of Rome by the Visigoths marked the beginning of the end for the Western Roman Empire. While the empire would limp on for several more decades, its aura of invincibility was irrevocably lost. The event signaled the shifting sands of power, with the old world giving way to the new, setting the stage for the medieval era's dawn.